Welcome to the Win at Home First podcast. I'm your host, Corey Carlson. This podcast is where we talk about how successful business leaders win, not only at work, but also at home. On this podcast, we'll go behind the scenes with great leaders to hear stories of how they win. Thank you for listening, and on to today's episode. Hello, this is Corey. This next episode with Dan Britton, who you'll hear about in a minute, is a great episode. It's one of the longest ones I've published. And quite honestly, when I have gone back to re-listen to it, there's nothing I wanted to take out to make it shorter. So I encourage you to stick through the whole thing because there's all parts of wisdom throughout the whole part. From the beginning where we talk about how we need to be open to divine encounters while we're traveling, while we're out and about. We talk about the importance of a family vision at home. He's had a long career at FCA for 30 years. And I work with a lot of people who are questioning their calling or what is their calling in life. And he's got some great answers to that and to the consistency of him showing up every day. We talk about controlling the controllables and how that works out. Talk about The One Word, a book that he wrote that has just gone on to international success. Talk about the idea of pursuing wisdom. There is so much that we cover. I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I did having this conversation as well as re-listening to it. And on to today's episode. Hello, this is Corey Carlson. You're listening to Win at Home First podcast. I'm excited about today's guest, Dan Britton. I'll explain how I met him here in a minute, but he is an author of 6 books, one of which has been pretty darn instrumental in my life, talking about the one word, and we'll discuss that today. He's also the chief field officer for FCA, located in Kansas City. Being from Kansas City, it's a building and organization I was well aware of. And then he's an author, speaker, a father of 3 kids and married. So he is winning in all areas of life. And so wanted to have him on as a guest to learn and share some insights and ideas. So Dan, thank you very much for being on the Win Home First podcast.
Amen. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, to get started, I think it's fun of how we met, and just to give some context for the listeners, and even to remind yourself, because I don't know if I shared all this with you, but I went to Kansas City in October and to see my dad and my brother and have a weekend. And so as I'm sitting in the Kansas City airport, I look up, I see you engaging with your team, could tell you're the leader, the way everyone was engaging back and forth. And I just took note of that. And then I put my head down, and next thing I know, I'm looking up and you're leaning against a column praying on the phone. And I could tell that you were, and I just like, who is this guy? He's leading his work team over here. He's over here praying for, I don't know who was on the other end of that phone call. If it was a small group, if it was a family member, don't know. But I was like, you know what? I want to talk to this guy. I like leaders like this who are strong in their faith. They're not afraid to pray in public. So I got up, walked over with my Win Home First book in hand. I always travel with a few. And I handed you the book, and you were super kind. You let me give my whole talk, sales pitch. And you said, oh, this is great. And then you pointed up to John Gordon's name on the top of the book. And you said, do you know him? And I was like, I kind of know him. And you're like, oh, he's one of my best friends. I was like, oh my gosh. So anyways, wild story. We had a good little couple more minute conversation, but man, I just thank you so much for the example that you were in the airport, as well as graciously receiving my conversation.
Yeah. I tell you, Corey, you got to always look for those God moments, right? Those serendipitous moments of connections that God kind of shows up. And I tell you, I travel almost 50% of my time, at least pre-COVID. Still travel quite a bit, but I'm always fascinated to see who God brings into my path to have a divine connection. And I believe that was one of them, that we had a chance there in the Kansas City airport. We're getting ready to head out to a leadership development program that we do with some of our top emerging leaders in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. And so we had about 5 or 6 from our office here in Kansas City flying to Atlanta to be with about 30, 40 other young emerging leaders. And that was when you caught us getting ready to head there. But, I think a lot of times we don't expect that, but I'm starting to, Corey, go like, I expect that. I expect that when I get out and I'm traveling, I see that God's going to bring people my way that he wants me to engage with, to connect with, to minister to pray with. I could tell you story after story of standing in the back of an airplane flying around the world, talking to someone, praying with them, ministering to them, because God allowed us both to get up and get a break and stand in the back and get some peanuts and a soft drink. And here comes ministry comes out of it. And I think as believers, Corey, we have to expect that, and for some reason we're always surprised by it. It's like, that's what God does. God loves to orchestrate that on our behalf.
Yep. No, that's great. I think some of it's almost a self-fulfilled prophecy in the standpoint of, if we leave our house and get on the plane that day, or doesn't even have to be a plane, it could just be any random travel encounter, thinking, oh, I'm not going to see anybody today, I'm just going to keep my head down and get my work done. Well, of course you're not going to see anybody. Your head's down. But instead, if you get on there like, today I'm going to have a cool divine encounter, it's going to happen because your eyes are open to see, ears to hear, and your hands are just open to receive whatever God has for you. So, man, that's so neat to hear you say that.
I feel like I could write a book just on divine encounters while traveling. I've prayed with flight attendants who they opened up, and I've literally, like, they've wept as they've shared what's going on in their life, and just having a chance to pray over them and to pray with them and for their families. But, they don't probably have a pastor in their life that's stepping in and just seeing those opportunities has been a joy. And it's like, that's not even my ministry. I work with coaches and athletes, and yet we're always ministers, right? We're always stepping into the gap, allowing God to use us. And it's just one of those joys to have your head on a swivel, say, okay, Lord, oh, there's Corey. Look, he's coming up to me. He heard me talk, heard me pray with someone on the phone. And here's one of those another divine encounters. And here we are doing this podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so fun. I could keep talking about that. That's good. But I do want to dive into a couple questions that I was excited to learn from you. And one is, I love asking leaders, what's that key trait that you believe people need to have in order to win at home first?
Yeah, wow. Win at home first. I think, Corey, that if you're not winning at home, you're not winning anywhere, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're not winning at home, nothing else matters. If you are winning at home, nothing else matters. So it all starts with winning at home. And we say a lot of times in the sports world, you got to win in the locker room first. Yeah. Well, it's the same concept, win at home first. And if you're winning at home first, then nothing else matters. Like, everything else falls into place. If you're not winning at home, nothing else matters because everything's falling apart. And I'm blessed now. My wife and I have been married for 30 years. We dated for 9 years. So we've been together almost for 40 years. That's a whole nother story, the 9 years of dating all the way through high school and college and 1 year afterwards. But I'm only 53, and I've known her for almost 40 years of my 53 years on earth. So Pretty much she knows everything about me. And we had 3 adult kids, and all 3 got married Eli, our youngest one, back in September. And now we just got to wait for grandkids. We got 3 married kids, and bring on the grandkids, which we're not, no pressure, but hey, that's the next season. But when our kids were young, I think where it starts, Corey, is we have to know exactly what our family's all about. I remember when our kids were young, we gathered them in the kitchen table, and we said, what's going to be our family mission statement?
Mm-hmm.
And I know you probably train on this, and you share that, hey, you should have a family mission statement, you should have a personal mission statement, organizational mission statement. And I remember as the 3 of them and my wife and I, we sat around the table and we came up with the simplest, sticky, transferable mission statement we could, which is simply this: love God, love family, love others, love yourself, nothing else matters. And I'm telling you, like, our kids never had to write it down. Even today, if you actually called my 3 adult kids and asked them, hey, what was the Britton family mission statement? They would go, oh my gosh, it's love God, love family, love others, love yourself, and nothing. And they would love the last part, right? They would go like, and nothing else matters. And they say with a little passion. But I think really that's where it started, Corey, is just knowing what our destination was. What is we're on point to do what? And that really became our family creed, our family mission statement that guided us. And here we are now. My 3 kids, through a lot of prayer and obviously focus, that here they are. They married 3 amazing, solid Christian believers, and their family, all the families. So like their families and our family, no divorce, all together. It's like unbelievable how God allowed all this to happen. But it started with, I think, really around that kitchen table and just simply as a leader, first and foremost, not of a ministry reaching 2 million people around the world and 2,300 staff that I have to oversee, but actually I got 3 kids and a wife I have to lead. So
Absolutely.
leading 4 was more important than 2,300. And sometimes we get that reversed around and we think, oh, I got to lead these 2,300. And oh, by the way, the 4 get my leftovers. They get the table scraps. Versus, man, I'm going to give my very best to my family. And I'm going to invest most in them. And oh, by the way, I get the opportunity to lead 2,300 people and staff around the world.
Yeah, it's so good. I'll share a lot with clients and just, friends where the end of the day does not stop when you walk through the front door. It's when you put your head down at the pillow. Because so often, you're right, people get the scraps, they get the fumes left in the gas tank, whatever it may be. And so to put that first. And I love the idea of a family vision and values. We too have one. And for us, it was interesting how it kind of all started. We moved to Cincinnati. I remember someone on main stage, it wasn't our main pastor, someone else talking about how your family vision statement has to be greater than the 6-year-old boy that could be the boyfriend for your daughter. Because otherwise it'll be a distraction. I remember hearing that, and my daughter at the time was only 8, but then now she is 16. And I was like, oh my goodness, my family's got to be about something bigger. So we did put together that vision statement. Ours isn't, short and pithy. Ours is, rooted in God. We branch out to bring others hope, love, and joy. And so that's been fun to do, but it also helps remind our family what it's all about. And it's interesting, Dan, as you talk about that, so many people just wing it. Like, hey, we got a vision statement for work. We've got strategy meetings at work. We've got, our weekly cadence meetings with our direct reports. But yet at home, no vision statement, infrequent date nights. But we hope every once in a while we get to hang out with our kids. But those are the ones that end up losing in the end.
Yeah, I think I love it. It's not that hard, right? It's not that hard to put together. It was one night around a kitchen table for us to craft that short, sweet mission statement that they remember 30 years later, right? It just became it became our cornerstone. It became our foundation of our family. And then again, it's like you said, people invest in us and there's other things that you then can bring into that. I remember one of my mentors said, Dan, every week date your wife. And so every Wednesday we had a date night, put it on the calendar. I said no to a million speaking opportunities and other great things that I had a date with Dawn. I didn't go. I'm like, oh, by the way, I'm just dating my wife, so I can't come. I'm like, sorry, I got an appointment that night. I can't come, and reserve that time. And that investment meant more to her than anything. And then when the kiddos came along, every Friday we had pizza and movie night. And so pizza movie night was, we only ate downstairs in the basement, never outside the kitchen, except on Friday night. Turn the ping pong table into a big, huge picnic table and put the pizza down there. The kids thought they died and went to heaven having pizza downstairs that they normally don't have. They'd pick the movie out. And that became our time when pizza movie night on Friday nights. And so you suddenly start putting these few little anchors in, like your mission statement, date night, family pizza movie night. And again, I wasn't perfect at everything, but I did a few things really well. And I did it consistently over time. And with that, God blessed it. Through that consistency and that faithfulness, God's favor came on of developing a game plan and a pattern. It's kind of like this. It's like, what's the Britton way? Like, how are we going to do life? And the Britton way was, hey, we do pizza movie night on Friday. Hey, we have a mission statement. Hey, mom and dad have a date once a week. And that became our way, the Britton way.
Here it said before where it's like, the systems create, security for teams. Well, it does the exact same thing for families, where if a family knows, hey, every Friday night is pizza night for you guys, we've got our date nights on Saturday night. And they just, when there's that level of consistency brings confidence. And then the kids can then be courageous out and about because they know they're loved. They know there's an anchor at home. So that's so good.
It creates, and especially, I think families, the nuclear family, that we need to have boundaries. We need to have guidelines that actually help create the pathway that they can predict. Like you said, there's freedom in there. There's a lot of flexibility that we want to navigate and be open to God's leading, but still those become guardrails for us as a family to keep us on the path we want to come. And I remember that. Then you go back and you have heart checks. I remember my oldest daughter, Callie, was in 7th grade. I was traveling a lot. And I remember the day, Corey, I had to serve at a lot of the big sporting events. Like FCA would come in and we would host a big coaches outreach or big outreach for the community. And so around the NCAA Final Four, I would go in. For 12 years in a row, I went to the Final Four, and everyone's like, "Oh, you lucky, you get to go to the Final Four." I was like, "Oh, we're working. We're working a table, ministering to coaches. We're doing outreach lunches." And if you say lucky, that's great. But it was great being in that environment. But I remember being in San Antonio. She was in 7th grade, and my wife called, and we had some issues. And I remember talking to Callie. I was standing in the courtyard of this hotel, and I realized, like, by me traveling created more space for her to not be in the guardrails. And she wasn't doing the Britton way. And I told her, I said, Callie, I will quit FCA so I can be a dad first. And if this is one of those moments, the defining moments for our family, that here we moved all the way to Kansas City so I could take this new job and now travel, and I can't be there for you, and it's creating problems at home for my 7th grade daughter, then I will quit FCA and I will get a 9-to-5 job so I can be there for you. And this is up to us to figure out. Mm-hmm. It's up to us to figure out. And I wept with her and cried sitting in San Antonio, not knowing how this was going to turn out. But it was a defining moment for her to know what I was willing to risk and what I was willing to give up for her. And she later told me, Dad, I just wanted to know how far I could push the envelope. Wow. And when I realized that I couldn't push it as far as I thought, I realized that, hey, I needed to come back in line and know that you really cared about us. You really cared about me. And I'm telling you that those few things, having them in place, Corey, allowed us to redefine how we were going to move forward to make sure that we put family first. And I tell you, that was a game-changing moment for the Britton family.
No, that's so neat. Thanks for sharing that story. For other listeners that are having maybe those testing boundaries, the freedom in the framework, they're kind of getting pushed up against there. Did you see smoke signals coming kind of along the way that you're like, I think I'm going to have this conversation one day? I mean, San Antonio conversation wasn't out of the blue, I bet, in the standpoint that you may have thought, oh, there's something's coming. Maybe once I get back from the Final Four, we'll discuss it.
Yeah, I went and joined the Final Four that year for sure. But there was a couple along the way, like the idea of some friend choices, which obviously for junior high is a big deal. And some of the things we found out, and it kind of came more to light. So it was like we saw a little bit. We thought, hey, it was in control. It was Callie just being 7th grade. She's pushing the envelope a little bit. But it really manifests itself to that. And again, I think we have to be ready that when it does show, when it is put into the light, that we have to respond. And how we respond, again, it goes back to our family mission statement. It's like, hey, we got to love God first. Am I loving God first in this situation with my daughter? And hey, I'm going to even put family even above others. There's a little bit of extra, like that's why we put that in there. It's like, hey, we want to love others, but man, we put family just a skosh above the others to know they're right below God. And that was the key. Is like, hey, Callie, remember, love God and love family. Like that's the most important thing to me is you guys, I'm not willing to risk it and ruin our family for the sake of my job, my calling. I mean, I'm telling you, that was a wake-up call. And I think that helped us, Corey, kind of reset some stuff. And then, man, we learned from that. So when the other 2 kids came along, I think we were able to navigate and do a better job as parents steering them through that.
Yep. Oh, that's fantastic. Hey, another thing I want to talk about is the one word, the book. Love it. Thank you for writing it. And back to a family thing. That's something that all of us as a family, we each grab a word. And so thank you for doing it. And it's fun to have that. What made you just write that book, going back to when you first, wrote it, and you had a couple co-authors with you, but what sparked the one word idea in your life?
Yeah, I tell you, Corey, it's a fun little story to reflect on. It actually goes all the way back to 1999, going into Y2K, when the world was going to all melt and the computers were going to shut down. And
That's right.
I was living in Northern Virginia, outside the DC area, and I was the local staff guy there. And one of our staff guys, Steve Fitz, and I were invited to go speak down at Ocean City, Maryland, a big youth conference with about 5,000 kids. And I think he was speaking to 5,000 kids. I was speaking to like 100 adults. Like that was my role. That was his role. He's a former NFL player, phenomenal speaker. And we had about 3.5 hours in the car. And back then we didn't have Starbucks. So we just had Dunkin' Donut coffee, and we're buzzing down the road and kind of catch up on some stuff. And I still remember it was heading into Y2K, and we actually planned to get together. We actually brought in the year 2000 together, our families, his family and our family, because of our conversation then. And it was awesome. And realizing that, hey, the computers didn't melt and the world didn't explode.
Yeah, we're still around.
Yeah, we're still around, alive and kicking. But he said to me, Corey, he goes, hey, Dan, what's your one-word vision statement? I never had heard that. And I'm probably a lot like you, Corey, very driven. I had a 7-page Word document with all my roles, goals, targets, assignments, just everything listed out. And every year I'd look through it, update it, and man, I'd put it in front of me. I'd printed it off, Dan Britton's game plan. And at the end of the year, I'd get like 10% accomplished and be like, great, I'm going to do better next year and do the exact same thing. And really out of frustration and failure, I would keep doing it like a dog returning to his vomit. I just continue to go back to that game plan. And so Steve asked me, hey, what's your one-word vision for the year 2000? Well, I thought he was asking about my 7-page Word document.
That's right.
So I went into a big, long sermon for about 20 minutes. And well, I had these 5 key roles I play. I'm a husband, I'm a father, I'm a ministry leader, I'm a friend. Here's my goals under each one. I had it all memorized, just I wasn't putting it into action. And so he let me go for about 20 minutes. And Steve is patient. And again, big former NFL player, strong, could like crush me with one single hug.
Yeah.
And Steve goes, you're an idiot, Dan. He goes, I didn't ask what for a sermon. He said, I asked for one word. And honestly, Corey, I was like, okay, I'll shrink all that down into a cool phrase, pithy, catchy phrase, and thought about it. And I gave him the one phrase. And he goes, Dan, I didn't ask for a phrase, I asked for a word. Well, I was stumped. So I remember turning it back on Steve. And I go, Steve, what, fine, big boy. I go, you're pressing me about my one word. I don't have a word. I have a lot of words.
Yeah.
What's your one word? And I'll never forget, Corey, he said harvest. Well, Steve lived in DC, Washington, DC, a lot of concrete. I'm like, harvest? What do you want to be, a farmer? Like what the heck is going on, Steve?
Yeah.
And this is what he said. He goes, Dan, as a speaker and communicator to young people, and he speaks to about 150, 200,000 young people every year. He says, I want to plant seeds of greatness in the next generation and see a harvest of young leaders rise up. I still get chills when I tell that story.
Yeah.
And I was stunned of the clarity and the focus and the power of just one word for him for the year 2000. So he goes, what's your word? And I said, harvest. I didn't say that. I said, I go, Steve, I don't know what my word is, but I go, I need to pray about it. And for the next 2 weeks, I journaled, I prayed, I sought the Lord. And I remember one morning during my morning run, the Lord almost like dropped a word. Like it was like not me like trying to pull a word out of a hat, but it was like the word intimacy came. And realizing I was a mile wide and an inch deep, and the Lord wanted me to go deep in my relationship with him, to get serious about my faith, get serious about my relationship with my family, get serious about my relationship with my teammates, the coworkers I work with. And Corey, I'm telling you, that year 2000 wasn't Y2K. It was the year of intimacy. And that really began a journey over the next 21 years of having a one-word vision. And then shortly after that, probably about 10 years after that, got together with Jimmy Page and John Gordon, and we wrote the book. And it's just been awesome to see how God has used that significantly around the world.
What is your word this year?
Well, so my word last year was heart. And John Gordon and I had the same word. It's the first time the three of us, each of us had a similar word. we usually don't reveal it to each other until like January 1st. And John's like, hey, my word's hard. I'm like, wait a minute, that's my word.
Yeah.
You can't have it.
Copycat, come on.
Yeah, but it was really cool because we had a chance all last year to actually encourage each other. Hey, here's a verse with heart in it. Hey, here's a quote. So it's really interesting with someone with the same word to really inspire each other and motivate each other and stretch each other in that word. And I think last year, Corey, I was going into this new year and thinking, man, 2020 was a difficult year.
Mm-hmm.
It was a good year, but it was a difficult year, very, very difficult. And I kept thinking there was a lot of difficult things that were planted in the year 2000, I believe are going to manifest themselves in 2021. And so as I was going into the new year, praying and thinking and meditating on my word, I think 2021 is going to be a very complicated year. So we're going to move from difficult to complicated. And with that, what's better for complication is wisdom. Is, man, Lord, I want to have a heart of wisdom. So so my word for 2021 is wisdom. And I love what Chuck Swindoll says. Chuck Swindoll says, wisdom is seeing things the way God sees things. And I want to see things in 2021 the way God sees things. And so I'm just asking for a heart of wisdom in the year 2021.
Thank you very much for listening to today's episode. I hope you are enjoying it so far. Before we go back to the rest of this episode, I want to share with you my book, Win at Home First. Some of you have read it, so thank you very much. For others of you, you have not. And I encourage, if you're looking for a resource to help you with these times of your work is now in your home and your home is now in your work and what this looks like, this book is being helpful to many leaders like you. Forbes magazine said it was one of 7 books everyone on your team should read. And the book is broken up into 4 different sections to help you. First is about you, understand who you are. The second is marriage and ideas and tips to help with your marriage. Third is parenting. And the last is work. So these 4 different sections to help you recalibrate during this time and to help move forward. So if you are needing additional resources, I encourage you to check out my book, Win at Home First. It is available on Amazon as well as Audible. And so on to the rest of the episode. Thank you very much. Now, also, when we did talk to each other in October, and we can edit this out if we need to, because if it's still confidential. But speaking of wisdom, you were writing a book at that time on Proverbs, which is obviously a book of wisdom. So how's that book coming along?
Yeah, so it is out, just came out. And I tell you, this concept is great because my friend Ron Forseth, so this is a cool story. Back in, I think it was like, I don't know, it was about at least 10 years, 10, 15 years. Ron was working for an organization and I was working obviously for FCA. And it was like, man, our 2 organizations can partner. What they do for ministries and nonprofits is phenomenal. They're huge. And so when he was working for this organization, we go, hey, we're going to partner and this is what we're going to do. We're going to create some resources. We're going to leverage this. And Corey, we met probably 15 times and nothing came out of it. It was so frustrating. It was like, how can we not make this work? So every time we came up with something and put it before our leadership, it was like, no, and hey, no over here, no here. And so we get done after a couple of years of him coming here to Kansas City. I went out there and it was like we had nothing to show for except a relationship and a friendship. And really, God put us together in a very, I would say, supernatural way that now we're like best friends. And so Ron called me up. It was over 10 years ago. And he said, hey, Dan, he goes, I want to do this thing called the Wisdom Challenge with you. I'm like, well, man, I love that. He says, let's read through the book of Proverbs together. You know, there's 31 Proverbs, 31 days. I'm like, Ron, I've done that for years. I've read Proverbs. I know proverb a day keeps Satan away. Yeah, I got it. Great stuff. And he goes, no. I know I've done that too. But he says, let's do it together. And I was like, oh, we're going to read it on the phone together? He goes, no. You read it. I read it. And then we text each other and let us know, hey, what did God reveal to us in that chapter of Proverbs? And now you're sharing with me. I'm sharing with you. It's iron sharpening iron. And now we're going through Proverbs together. I was like, okay, that sounds kind of cool. That's fine. I've never done that before. I'm telling you, Corey, like 10 days in, I couldn't wait to get in God's word. Couldn't wait to see what God was going to reveal to me. Couldn't wait to text Ron what God showed me. And I couldn't wait to hear what God revealed to Ron. Was it going to be the same verse? Was it going to be a different verse? Maybe I can learn from Ron. And it was like a double blessing. It was like I was going through Proverbs like twice a day and getting twice the value, because this whole idea of partnering with, right? So the idea is pursue wisdom, partner in wisdom, and then pass it along. Because when we got done with the 31 days, he said to me, okay, you got to go find someone else. You got to pass it on. So we made a commitment to pursue wisdom daily. We made a commitment to partner in wisdom daily. And now pass it on is now finding someone else. And so I said, man, I'm going to call my son Eli, and I'm going to do it with Eli. And man, I mean, I've done tons of Bible studies with my son. I've prayed with him. I mean, I've been to Holy Land with him. And to actually see him, the way he looked at scripture and every day for us to share in that, it was like a gift from heaven. And so anyways, this little concept of Wisdom Challenge is a neat thing on the whole idea of pursue, partner, and pass it on.
Oh man, I love that. And like, well, whether it's with Ron or with Eli, your son, you get to know what's going on in their life at another level. You know, just the other night on our Sunday night dinners, we like to say, hey, what are you most excited about this week? And, you know, what's God calling you into, each of the kids? And you just hear things. You're like, oh, I didn't really know that was going on this week. I thought I had a pretty good handle on what you had. And so it's just neat to see. Well, that's fascinating. I'm going to have to do the pursue, partner, pass it on for the wisdom. I like that. There's just so much power in spending time in the Word and then writing about it. I right now am working on my second book, and it's this mindset devotional, basically, because of 2020 was such a roller coaster. Before we hit record, we talked a little bit about just when I lost public speaking, it was oh my goodness, what's happening? God, I thought we were building this business together. Like all these, you know, crazy negative thoughts you have, the devil started to get in your head. But due to mentors or friends and just my own quiet time, there were some verses that I just kept going back to throughout the year that I started writing on them. And the idea of, hey, how could these verses help other business owners when they have these mindset challenges, when the devil's whispering in their ear and all that. So much fruit comes out of not just reading the word, but actually, how does it apply to my life right now? And instead of just a quick looking at the phone, look at the app, but actually spending time thinking about it and, you know, digesting it with some people is good.
Yeah, I love that. The phrase I like to use on that is linger longer. Right? If we linger longer in God's word, there's some amazing things that come out. But instead, we love the 1 minute devotional. We love to do a quick prayer here and there. And I'm not saying that God doesn't love us. If we have a minute, he'll use our minute and do great things. And I think he loves quick prayers. But I tell you, I think God longs for us to go, look, I'm running out of time. Let's pray real long. Hey, I don't have time. Let's linger longer in God's word.
Yeah.
And it should be the reverse of it, because, hey, things are crazy. We should be spending more time in God's word. We should be communing more with God versus cutting it back and really shortening that time. We should lengthen that time. And I think hopefully even during the pandemic that everyone's routines are off. Like rhythms and routines are out the window. And my hope was, hey, are we gonna take advantage of these? Hey, we're not traveling as much. We're not buzzing around as much. You have a little bit more freedom with the schedule. Well, are we filling that with times with engagement with God and getting our face in the book? That's the key. And I wanted to go, hey, I'm going to take advantage of the pandemic, of having more time with God, more opportunity to grow in my faith, to come out of it stronger because of that lingering longer with God. Linger longer with the Lord is going to be just a blessing and a favor.
Yeah. Likewise, 2020, I spent a lot more time in the Word. I know, you know, many people did, which is good stuff. And you talk about your first word of one word of intimacy. That's exactly what, you know, God wanted with, you know, from the beginning. It's about an intimate relationship as he walked in the garden in the cool of the day with Adam and Eve, trying to find him. Obviously, we know the rest of that story, but it goes back just to that intimacy. So I think it's great. Dan, another thing I wanted to hit on talking with you is, as I look at my own career, but as I work with other leaders, as things start to evolve, people want to leave their employer and go do something different. Like I got this call and I think I want to go to this job, or I've written a book and I want to leave, or I want to speak. But for you, you're an anomaly. Yeah, I mean, 30 years at one employer, that's wild. Unfortunately, you just don't hear about that a lot. But not only have you been loyal to FCA, but in the same time, you've co-authored 6 books. Well, and now a 7th, and done speaking. How were you obedient to God? There had to be times in your career like, all right, I think I'm out. I think we talk about John Gordon. I think I'm going to follow, a path like his, where I'm going to go be a national speaker, author. I've got a lot of individuals that will come to me talking about calling and is it my time to stay or time to go? Explain a little bit of parts in your career there of how you felt that the nudge to leave. Is that God? Is that the pizza I ate last night? What is that? And so I'd love to hear kind of your journey.
Should I stay or should I go? Right.
That's right.
That's the way the song goes. I tell you, we didn't even talk about this. This is like my sweet spot. Like if you want to hit one thing about leadership, probably my greatest pet peeve in leadership is how much we transition, how quickly we're willing to grass is greener on the other side. Like you just went ding, you just hit the button. So hopefully you can calm me down a little bit. But one of the things is FCA, we have about 2,300 employees in the field in 107 countries. And we hire 300 to 400 staff every year. And we have new staff training. They come here in Kansas City and we train them and take a week long. We talk about spiritual leadership and talking about the heart, the spiritual heart of leadership, and kind of pulling back the layers and trying to get them spiritually strong, just not X's and O's of FCA, but more about the heart of leadership. And one of the things I do at the very beginning, and before I start talking to them and sharing a vision about FCA ministry, I challenge them on what their definition of ministry is. So a lot of times they're like, wait a minute, with FCA, we already have our vision, mission, and values, and strategy, and methods, and all these things Corey. We do.
Appreciate it, man.
But we kind of back it up. And one of the things I say all the time to them is, if you could define ministry, how would you define it? And I'm telling you, in interviews, I've asked hundreds of people I've interviewed in FCA that one question, and I've never gotten an answer. So here you are, willing to give your whole life to this calling of going into ministry, like this word ministry, and you've never even defined it. Like, what's your personal definition of ministry? Mm-hmm. So I actually take them through an exercise before we start talking about FCA ministry. I go, what's your definition of ministry? Challenge them to be able to write stuff out. It's just awesome. So it's like a 2-hour workshop I do with them. And then I say, going back to the one word concept of zipping it down, I go, okay, now if you could take ministry and zip it down into one word, what would that word be? How would you define ministry? And then I say to them, it can't be Jesus. We all understand Jesus is the foundation of everything. Don't do the Sunday school answer, okay? Yeah. I want to, hey, let's just assume Jesus is the foundation for all ministry. But hey, now what is a one word for you? And I'm telling you, it is awesome to see how God works. And the reason why I do that is I tell them that about 8 years into ministry, about 22, 23 years ago, I was, young. I was trying to prove myself. I was saying yes to everything and just wanted to see how God was going to use. I wanted to be used by God. So of course, yes to everything. And I remember reading a book called Overload Syndrome by Swenson. He wrote Margin, which is a great book. And he wrote this book called Overload Syndrome. And people write in with problems and they say, hey, I got this problem. And he, as a Christian psychiatrist, would actually reply back to the answer. And I remember about page 80 or 90, this lady wrote in, and this is what she said. This was the game changer. She said, Dr. Swenson, I never know if I should stay or if I should go. I don't know if I should move, get a new job, change churches. I don't know if it's too early or too late. I just don't know how I'm able to evaluate if I should stay or if I should go. And I'll never forget what he wrote. He said to her, go get a handful of apple seeds and go in the backyard and plant them. And he said, don't move, don't get a new job, and don't change churches until you can yield a bushel of apples off that tree, which would probably be 8 to 10 years. I was like, that is awesome. He says, if after 8 to 10 years, if hey, you're still not seeing things happen in your church, you had the freedom, the green light to go find another church after a decade. Hey, if you don't see things working in your neighborhood and hey, things aren't working out, hey, maybe it's time to start looking. Hey, job-wise, hey, after 10 years of investing and you feel like, hey, God's closing doors, then you have a chance to be able to move on. And I'm telling you, Corey, it was like God spoke to me and he said, Dan, you need to start thinking in 10-year increments. Not 1 year, not 1 month, not 1 day, 10 years. And so my one word is consistency. Look at this. I even got it. Someone made this for me.
Yeah.
Consistency.
Love it.
The biblical definition is faithfulness, but I like the word consistent. I just want to keep showing up. Every day show up. And people all the time go, you're still not doing FCA? When are you going to grow up and get a real job? I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what a real job is. I don't know what growing up means, but I'm still doing FCA. But I now think, Corey, in 10-year increments. So I'm 30 years on staff with FCA, just finished up 30 years last year. So I'm 3 units, 3. Yep. So I count my time with FCA as 3. I'm like 3, like check. I can't wait to get to 4, right? Because now every 10 years I'm coming up saying, okay, God, is this where you want me? Do I make a change? Am I fulfilling the calling that you put in my life? Am I pleasing you with everything I'm doing? Oh, great. Hand to the plow, go down for another 10 more years. Put my hand to the plow. Don't look left. Don't look right. Keep plowing ground. Hey, 10 years later, pop up, look around. God, am I being used by you? Is this where you want me? Is this my calling? Keep going.
Man, that's fascinating. I love it. I've not honored the 10 years myself since I've done some job hopping and switching. So I'm guilty. And I know there would be other listeners guilty as well. So one, I think it's just so neat, your consistency of showing up. How do you handle like maybe the boredom along the way, or the leadership's not doing what I want them to do, or they seem scatterbrained. I'll go somewhere else. There's better leadership. There's better development. How did you stay consistent during those 10 years when there were for sure ups and downs? It wasn't rosy every day.
Yeah, it's a great point. And obviously there's seasons being around some leaders. Like I just go, oh my gosh, like I don't want this to ever change. Like the leadership dynamic is perfect. Other times I went through a while ago, a situation. I just was like, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to keep going with FCA. Like there was a situation that it just grew and grew and grew, and it's creating a lot of anxiety. And I think it's the idea, Corey, of the hard part is you have to control the controllables. Yeah. And I think where we get out of balance is when we stop controlling the controllables. Like I can control my attitude. I can control my fun level, like, hey, whether I'm going to approach it every day. I can control my disciplines of how I'm going to stay in shape and be ready and prepared and be all that I can be, that God wants me to be. And I just realized that if I just get back to going, okay, Lord, I'm going to show up every day doing the things that I know I need to do to have the greatest contribution for the kingdom. I want to have a kingdom impact on this earth. I want to do everything. So that means, hey, I know that literally, like, and it's not legalistic. It's a blessing that I have a 2-hour morning disciplines that I do every morning. So anytime, wherever I travel around the world, I have these 2 hours that now encompasses reading God's word, studying, worship music, journaling, running, listening to podcasts, listening to sermons, redeeming that time. I'd love to listen to music, but I want to redeem that time and be able to fill it up with godly knowledge, listen to audiobooks. And so I have a 2-hour morning disciplines that I just don't deviate from. And I know that if I don't do that, then I'm not going to be the best that I can be to be used by God in the greatest capacity. So yeah, all this stuff around me can change, and I might not like leaders, and I might not like the way they're responding to things. But man, if I know that, hey, God, you're allowing me to control the controllables, I'm showing up, making a difference, I'm seeing the wins personally and family-wise, then that's all I need. That's all I need to know that, hey, you're allowing me to step into that and do that. And so for me, I just feel like that is significant. That is very significant to be able to, again, have those routines and those disciplines to keep you motivated, to keep you inspired. Like I just can't wait to get up in the morning and just know, okay, another day I get to learn and grow and become a different leader and expand my knowledge so that I can be a better leader for Jesus Christ. Man, there's nothing better than that. Everything else is just icing on the cake.
I too love my morning time. When's yours? Your 2-hour window?
Well, it's interesting. I had a guy challenge me a long time ago in the start of this. He asked me, this guy named Ken, he was one of my dad's friends, and he's an older guy, very respected. He was not like me. He would pray about the clothes he would lay out the next morning, and he would lay it out the night before. That is not me. He broke his day into 15-minute increments. I remember Ken had me, he was kind of mentoring me a little bit because my dad was like, hey, Ken would be good for you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy is not like me. And it was early on in my FCA career. And he asked me, he goes, hey, Dan, when do you spend time with God? And I said, well, I get it in every day. I'm a ministry leader. I get it in. I try to do it in the morning, but I got kids and dogs and cats. And if I don't get it in then, I'll make it in for lunch, make it in. And he says, what's the most important time of the day? I give my time with God. He goes, so you mean you basically are just moving it all over the day and not giving God your best? And I said, yeah. And he said, instead of you saying, when do you fit God in? Why don't you ask God, when does God want to meet with you? I was like, holy cow, that's a trick question. He goes, have you ever asked God, like, God, when do you desire to meet with me every day? Not, hey, this is when I want to fit you in every day. When do I want to meet with God? Who cares when I want to meet with God? The better question is, when does God want to meet with you? So he said, and I broke out in a sweat when he said that because I couldn't answer it. He goes, Dan, take a week, pray about it, come back. So he sat behind this big, huge desk, and he was really proper. I don't think he had a hair out of place. And I prayed, and I was like, Lord, when do you want to meet with me every day? And like God spoke to me. God said, and I usually don't tell people this, but he said 4:30 a.m. And I don't think that's a godly hour. So I was like, Lord, are you sure that's you? Are you sure that's you? And he said, you're going to be up before the dogs, up before the cats, up before the kids. And that's the freshest, quietest time of the day. And I want to meet you at 4:30. So came back to him and I said, Ken, he said, when does God want to meet with you? And I said, well, I think this was God. He said 4:30 a.m. And I never forget, Ken goes, now it's a question of obedience.
Yeah.
I was like,
consistency. There you go.
Yep. And I would say for 12 years, I'm talking about Christmas, vacation, 4:30, double alarm. I just felt like I had to honor that for 12 years. And then God gave me a release after 12 years that, man, one day the Lord goes, okay, you don't have to do 4:30. I know you want to meet with me. Yeah. And every time, so it is early in the morning. So I'll wake up anywhere between 4:30 to 6:30, depending on the day, depending on when I get to bed, but it is early. But again, it's really dictated by carving out that 2 hours of start to finish before anything else happens in the day.
Man, it's good. Yeah, I'm an early one as well. I like the 5 a.m. and things are quiet, but my mind's also fresh. And I can be focused. I also don't look at emails and any notifications before that time, in the morning. Otherwise, I get distracted. One thing you mentioned about controllables, and I love how you apply that to your job. And I think it's so helpful. I was talking with a client here, today, and so it just kind of top of mind to share it, even for those listeners. Is part of that's at home too. Is control the controllables. Like tend to work with a lot more men, and it's like, well, my wife. It's like, no, it's you. Control the controllables. If you said you're going to be home at this time, be home at this time. Be slow to respond. Don't get angry. Be calm with the kids. Like all these controllables. It's like my kids are this, my wife is that. It's like, hold up. Start with yourself first. Control the controllables in the home. And then from there, we can maybe talk about some other things, but it starts with you. And so I love just how you were talking about that with your work and the surroundings that we have at work, but it just made me think. And so for that listener thinking, maybe things aren't perfect at home. It's, hey, let's just start with yourself. Let's start honoring control your schedule. Don't let it control you, and start working on those disciplines in your own life first. Just so fruitful.
Absolutely. And Corey, it's something else that I think that a good mindset for us is, I always thought like my family is counting on me doing this 2 hours. Because like they're counting that their dad and my wife would go, hey, my husband is getting his face in the book, is spending time with Jesus Christ. He's growing in his walk. And I'm counting on him every morning being a better father and a better husband because he's doing the things only he can do. Okay. Yep. So it's a good responsibility. I don't look at that as a heavy yoke, like, oh my gosh, like they're counting on me and it's a responsibility I got to carry out. It's a joy. It's like, oh my gosh, no one else can do that for me. And every day I feel this great freedom, but a blessing, almost like, Lord, thank you for this privilege of allowing myself to be able to grow daily so I can even be better as a leader to my kids and even my coworkers. My coworkers are counting on me as a spiritual leader of growing daily, having fresh manna, not pulling out a bunch of old manna, but fresh manna every day. Yep. They're counting on that. They're depending on it. They're depending on me showing up every day going, man, Dan's been with Jesus. Not like, oh, Dan was with Jesus a week ago. Yeah. But he was with, I could see that Dan was with Jesus today. And if we could have that understanding that our kids and our spouse and our coworkers want us to be with Jesus, they're counting on us being with Jesus, then that changes everything.
Yep, absolutely. And I know there's days I may miss something or I don't get to the gym or quiet time. My wife can see it. I mean, my wife is like, you need to get to the gym, or it's a right. Yeah, go now. Man, this has been a blast. So thank you so much for your time. I could keep going, but I just have to do a part 2. But Dan, what's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
So easy is there's a couple websites I mentioned, wisdomchallenge.com. Our one word website is getoneword.com. Get one word. And then on social is at FCA Dan. So social is basically FCA Dan. It's an easy one. Yep. And you can follow me on social. And then even my email is just dan@fca.org. So it's really easy, simple to be able to communicate and get a hold of me.
And great. Well, thank you so much for your time today. And look forward to continuing these conversations down the road.
Yeah, Corey, thanks for your ministry. I tell you, it's just a joy that there's someone that's committed to the family, to the home, and realizing that again, if you put family first, nothing else matters. If you don't put family first, nothing else matters because your whole life's a train wreck. So it's the most important thing. And for someone to be a champion in that, thank you.
Oh man, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
I want to thank you for listening to my podcast, Win at Home First. I am so grateful to hear from listeners like you that this content has been helpful. So now I would love for you to pay it forward. I want to get this message in the hands of more listeners. We need leaders to be winning both at home and at work, especially during this time. So please take a minute to share this episode with somebody you think would find value in it, as well as rate and subscribe. As a thank you, please visit my website at corymcarlson.com to download a free resource that people are finding value in. Thank you very much.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.